Okay, so the first thing we need to do is replace the pins on this PIR, these really short pins, with something quite a bit longer, so they'll reach past these capacitors onto the proto board we're going to put it on. So we'll just clamp this in the vise, just pop this off the lens. And we'll see we have these 3 pins. I'm just going to put a little fresh solder on those to make it easier to get off. Right, and grab our solder sucker. You can see that takes a fair bit off to start. You have to pull it out of the tip, keep it clean. There we go. Now we'll switch to solder braid, clean end. And just try and suck off the rest of that solder. Get as much off as we can. It does heat up, so careful your fingers. Okay, now what I usually do at this point is just clip the actual pin headers. Because there we go. And I'll grab the pin with some pliers and heat that up, and we should be able to just wiggle it out. It's not gripping it quite enough. Let's change our, well, no, I can't really get at it to heat then. Just clip it on good. Just want to make sure these are clipped through. Maybe even pull those off like that. There we go. That. So now we have that. We should be able to do a bit better job. Clamp it in, and now should grab the pin. There. Now we have it. Put it aside. Get good heat applied, it'll loosen right up and slip out. Now we have a look at the pins, see how open they are. That's pretty good. Let's see if this will fit in right away. Yeah, try and sometimes there's still a little bit of solder stuck onto the side of the holes. Use a little bit of weight to try and get that out. Here we can be a little more aggressive. Because we're not applying heat to a component here, and you can see how a little bit of solder came out. We're not applying heat directly to a component, so we don't have to worry about overheating quite so much. You do have to worry about overheating the copper to the point where it peel off, but that usually takes a fair bit. So that might do it. So now we put our, there we go. So they've slid right through. So now we want to, I'm just gonna see about pushing these down onto the header strip, the plastic strip itself. We do that. Then we just treat it like a regular header with especially long pins. So mount this back in here, put a little bit of an angle. And put this up. Right now, trick is getting it to stay without burning yourself, while you can get at least one pin put in place. Right. A little bit of contortion here. There we go. So that puts one pin in place. Then we don't need to worry about holding it so much. We can get it straightened out. You want to get the pins really straight. Going straight down. And then we simply solder the rest. All right. And there we go. And then finally just clean that one up a little bit. There. How's that look? That's really good. Okay, so that's step one. Now we have header with long pins on it that we can use. They go well past the height of the capacitors. So now we simplify that. This will only go on one way. You can see the width and the hole spacing is a little different. It won't go on that way, so it only goes on the one way. And now we have our PIR ready to mount. Good. So now that we have the long pins on our PIR, we're going to put together the proto board. Since the PIR is going to sit fairly high, so it'll be like that, it'll obscure anything that's under it. So I usually start closer to the circuit board and work up. So I'm going to start with this NeoPixel. So just pop that on there. And then we need to tack it in place. So with it there, we just need to tack one pin down and then melt that solder, let it set it where it should be, and then we can go through and solder the other pins and it'll just stay in place nicely for us. Again, the joy of these through plated holes, solder sucks right through, you get a nice strong joint. So we heat it, add some solder, let it suck in, top it off a bit. That's usually how I like to work with it. There we go. So that's the NeoPixel in place. Next step, the other short components, if we will, are the light sensor. And we want this way out on the edge of the board so that it's not going to be in the shadow of the PIR. And we just bend, so if you see what I'm doing, if you haven't worked with through-hole components much, you make sure it's mounted well. And then you put the leads through, and then you just sort of twist it away. And that'll hold it in place for us. We don't have to worry about tacking it down the way we do with pieces of header strip or other components like that that don't have quite as flexible leads. So let's get this up here where it's nice and close. And let's just slide this resistor in like that. And again, that goes in. And flip it over and show. We have the leads. We just bend those out of the way. And now, we'll put it in here. Make sure our focus is good. We can just solder these parts on. Alright, a little bit more. Put it over here. More. And there. Now, how's that look on top? That's all good. Now, since these two pieces, this photoresistor and the carbon resistor are in a voltage divider, that means one side of each are connected together. So I put them in this way so that they're next to each other. So these two leads, one from the resistor and one from the photoresistor, we can just bend over like that and connect together. And then when we hook it up, the analog signal that'll give us the light level comes off of this pair that's connected together. So we just bend them over together, trim them off, and just put some solder on there to join them together. There we go. There. Nice and neat. And then we have the other two leads, the two outside edges or two outside connections of the voltage divider. Okay. All right. So as we said, this voltage divider, we want one leg, which will be the one from the photoresistor. That should be connected to a 3.3 volts. The other end of the regular resistor should go to ground, and that'll give us a voltage divider across it. Now the nice thing about these boards is that there's ground and 3 volts running right across the board. So if you look here, you can see, let me just mount this in here again. What can we point with? Let's point with a little piece of wire. Real closely, you can see here's the this 3.3 volt line. All these are connected together, and here is the ground. So we can take, very simply take this straight down here to the 3.3 volt line, and snip it off there. Get that little piece of wire out of the way so we're safe. We're just not going to short something out. Oh. And then simply solder that here. Okay, so that's connected to power now. Now this one we'll bring over. We want to be a little more careful with this one, so I'm actually going to shape it a bit more. I'm going to put it through this hole so that it's actually well up and over the 3 volt line, 3.3 volt line. We'll solder that on there to the ground line. And then we get the other side. We simply clip that off. And that's connected to ground. The other one we can see right there is connected to 3.3 volts. Alright. So now we have to do the same thing with our NeoPixel. And so with the NeoPixel, this pin over here is going to be ground, and this one, kitty corner from it, or catty corner, I know some of you say, is power. So we'll get a little piece of wire stripped for it. So the ground, we're going to run to the pin with the slant off of it. So that's going to be here. That's this pin. This pin here is ground. Let's just run that over to our ground line here. So if we do that and run that straight over to ground, try and let you see here. Yeah, we put it in here and we run it over to ground, which is here. Let's snip it off there. And I want to strip it off, slightly mark that. Strip the end off, put a nice 90-degree bend in it. Oh, hope that's not making too much noise. That goes in there. Then that goes on our ground like that, nice and neat. And on the other side, we can just sort of splay that out of the way. Actually, on this side, we want to bend it all the way over so that we can make contact with the pin of the NeoPixel. So that we can see right in here. And here's good. So now just get in here. We connect this to ground. Good. And I'll just snip that off. There we go. And over here, we'll connect it where it comes through the board, and then we're going to connect it to the pin from the NeoPixel. And I'm just going to snip this off, make sure it's not going anywhere. There we go. Okay, so now we want to do a very similar thing with power. So we'll strip a bit of insulation off the end. I have a red one here for this. And this is going to be kitty corner, so that's going to be up under here. So that's a bit of a nuisance. We might be able to get it through, or we can just go underneath. We can just do that. And that's going to go white piece to our power line, which is here. So let's just bring that again. So let's put this in here, and we're going to run from here. I'm going to hook that around up to power line, which is there. So let me trim off, and I'm just going to take a little bit of insulation off the end of that to solder it down. Okay. This one's a little bit messier, if you will. Here, let me put a little hook on the end so I can hook that in like that. And then that's going to come up and around there. So I'm going to actually bring it up around. Just to hook it down. And now that should stay put while we solder it down. Yeah. Always double check as you go, make sure everything's in the right place, and it is. So here I'm going to solder this onto this pin. There we go. Hacking things together like this isn't always pretty, but for a prototype, to prove a point, it does the job nicely. So now we have the power line running to our NeoPixel on the bottom of the board. We have a ground line running nicely on the top of the board. So our NeoPixel's in. We need the data into that. And likewise, our voltage divider for the light sensor is in, and we just need to hook up the signal for that. And now we can put our PIR on, because we're pretty much done with the top of the board. So I'm just looking at my prototype here. I want this on the short header side, so let's just put it here. I can't put it out here because these are all connected to the header strip pins, so I have to put it in here. So I'm going to put it in here. I want to make sure it's well clear of the light sensor, so it's not blocking that. I want it to be clear of the NeoPixel too, because that's our little indicator, at a glance indicator. So we don't want the PIR board to get in the way of that. So let's put it here. We have the light sensor well clear, and we have the NeoPixel well clear. So this I'm going to do, I'm going to mount the PIR in the vise. So this is just sitting on top, and that'll make it a little easier to, it'll stay in place since we're not trying to get the PIR stuck from underneath. The board is sitting on top of the PIR. So here we go. Now we can just give it a little bit of slack by lifting the board a bit, because we don't want things touching the board and shorting, and that's never a good thing. And so now we can finish soldering this on. Make sure it's good joints. Yep. Okay. So there we have it. We have our light sensor and our NeoPixel and our PIR. It's nice and stable on there. Yeah, it's got long leads, so it can be bent a bit and adjusted if we need to. The next step will be to hook up its power and ground. And if we pull off the top here, we can see we have ground over here. We have this output signal, whether or not there's motion, and VCC over here, which will run at 3.3 volts. So, just looking at this, we have our power and ground lines up here. And the easiest will be just to jump those over there. Let's do that. So I will get a bit of insulation stripped off the red wire. So VCC is closest to this end of the board. So that will be here. We want it to go there. So let's do this. Oh, here. Let me see if I can't make it more visible. And now we're wider because we have that PIR down there. So we'll just nestle that down. So yeah, we basically want to go from here, which is the power, over to, always double check. Yes, VCC is closest to the light sensor. So that would be down here. So I'm just going to cut that off there. All right. Pull this out and take a little bit of insulation off the end so we can solder. There we go. Now, the power line, and there. I'm going to put this on the inside where there's nothing to get too close to. So let's add a little solder. There we go. And then over here, we just need to solder it down there. There. So that is power. Now we'll do ground. And ground is on this side over here. Well, where's the white wire I was using? Light color to point with. Ground is over here, and that has to go to this line here. We could take it along here and connect it there. And I think actually that is what I will do. So, ground. We'll take a little bit of insulation off so we can, actually I'm going to put a hook on the end of this. So we can hook it around there to solder it, and then it wants to go, we want it to go here, where the ground from the voltage divider is coming. So that's going to be about there. Let's clip it off there and strip a bit of insulation off. Right. Okay. Now I'll put that. Just put a little angle on here, make it match up with what's there already. This gets kind of fun. It gets creative. How you're doing this wiring. Okay, so we want this down like, not quite like that. Let's pull this up again. Let's solder that end down first, shall we? Let's get some solder down here. All right. Yeah, this can be tricky on the fingers too, so be careful. Right, so that one's good there. There we go. Oh, no, not quite. There we go. So a close look at that, make sure we didn't short anything. Nope, nope, that looks good enough. All right, okay. So now I want to take this over here, and there we go. Something like that. There. That's solid, so it's onto the ground here, over to the ground pin of that. And although this is kind of hacky in terms of direct wiring, we do try and keep it fairly neat. So we got nice straight, fairly parallel lines here for the power and ground. And we use colored wire, or wire with colored insulation for, red for power, black for ground. And now I have some other wires. I have, well, we saw the white, which I've lost track of now. Here it is. It's hiding. So I got some white, some yellow, and some green to use for the different signals. All right. Doesn't matter what, it just keeps them separate. So let's see. We'll figure out what signals we want to connect these things to in a minute. All right, so now we have to connect up the data lines for the three sensors. Let's start by taking, let's use yellow for the NeoPixel. I'm just making this look like my my rough prototype. So I've marked here the pins that are going to be hooked up to the signals. Here's our input signal for the NeoPixel. That's going to connect here. Here is the midpoint of the voltage divider for our light sensor. That's going to connect here. And here in the middle is the data output from the PIR sensor, and it's going to connect here. So they're all pretty straightforward to do. So let's start with the NeoPixel. I stripped a little bit off the end of piece of yellow wire. I'm going to put that there, hook it around like I've done before, and this is going to go into this line here. So let's mark that very gently so we know where we're going to cut, or where we're going to strip it, cut that off, and now just pull a little piece of insulation off. Okay, and bend it so it'll go in that hole. So that's going to go here, and oh, that just fit nicely. A little nudge here. Get it around there. There we go. Lovely. Okay, clean off the iron. And let's do this. Put that there, there. Well, let's go back to that in a second. So the great thing about these Featherwing Proto boards is that you have this row of we have the outside rows for the header strips, but then they're connected to another row inside for making the connections to. So that works quite nicely. So I'm going to clean this up a bit there. Yeah, looks okay. So let's take green for a totally arbitrary reason and use that for our light sensor. So that's going to go here and over to here. So that's pretty straightforward. We'll just bend the end here, put it in here, and it's just going to go over and connect up to where we had previously connected the two resistors for the center point of the voltage divider that we'll use to measure the ambient light with. So again, we just strip off a bit off the end, drop that into the hole it has to connect into, and I'm going to tack that end down. Alright, and then, get my fingers not too much in the way, I hope. Then we can bend it so that it lines up nicely here. And then just solder it down onto that. And let all that solder melt together, and there we go. So we got a good connection over there, good connection there. Okay. So now we'll take the white and use that to hook up the PIR. And that is going right over there. So again, I'll strip a bit off, bend the end, And that's going to come, right over here. That's roughly where we want to go, and let's cut it right about there. Oop. Now, I might have to get some sort of soft mat for the desktop, because these tools make quite a bit of noise when I put them down. I have the mic up on an arm and a shock absorber, but I'm not sure if that actually does as much of a job of cutting down the noise as I want it to. So I might need something a bit more. Won't know that until I have a look at the video and listen to it. Okay, I need to clean this up a little bit in here. That's going a bit too far. There we go. Let's just clip that out of there. Okay. And this, I want to bend that a little bit more, because you got to be really careful about things shorting when you're doing this. You don't have the advantage of working with a nice circuit board. I'm just gonna see if you can. There we go. Sometimes it's just a bit of solder that's sticking out, even when you clip it. So you melt that back, it'll often just disappear essentially. So there we go. That's what I want. Nice and close. No problems with it shorting out against the other pin. So let's do this. Okay, and let's try and stay out of the light. Let's do that. Oh, got a little short there. That's where a solder sucker comes in, and it's good. Let's just touch those joints up a little bit, because I do need some solder to hold them together. There we go. Oh, there, that did good. Okay, that I think looks good. Let's have a look. So we have PIR, we have that side going to ground. And that's a little shorted too. That's why we always double and triple check these things. There we go, that's nice and clean. Yep, that's good. Okay, so we have, yes, the PIR ground going to here, this ground strip. The bottom leg of the voltage divider going to that as well. This here goes over to the, on the other side of the board, remember, it's the ground to the NeoPixel. Power, we have the CDS cell, the photocell side of the voltage divider, that leg going to power. We have power going down to the NeoPixel, and here we have power going to the PIR. PIR is connected there for its input signal. The output for the NeoPixel is here, and the input from the photocell is in the middle of the voltage divider, where the two resistors are connected to that signal. Now we just need to slap in some header strips and we're done. Thanks. Right, so the last bit to do is to put on the header strips. Now, doing something odd here. Usually I just put the pieces of header strip directly into the breadboard. But because we have you know, the soldering and pins for the NeoPixel and stuff on the bottom, we don't really have room. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to take stacking feather headers and use those. So let's see. And then mount those in the breadboard. And that will hold everything nicely in place. So we have that. And we have that. Here we go. It's sort of like having your board on stilts. It's a little odd. Okay. So we just need to solder these on as usual. Nothing too different. All of the Featherwing guides and all the breakout guides go over how to do this. There we go. Just flip it around. This is a little odder. I'm going to open this up just because the PIR is overhanging the edge of the board. I just want to get it up at an angle where I can get in there, see in there a bit better. Right, yeah, like that. And again, I'm going to have to tack it to keep it in place. There we go. Now let me just twist this a bit so I can see it from over where I am. And you can't see it because of the PIR. But we'll just get those connectors on, the header strip on. It doesn't take much to put these in. Just make sure you don't bump anything on that PIR. You could have put these headers on earlier, but working on the bottom of the board like that, it's kind of nice not to have them in the way while we're working. And let's see what's going on. There we go. There's a couple more pins. There we go, last one. They all look pretty good. So usually I want to do a little touch up here and there. That looks good. And then we can just pull the board out, pull those stacking header stilts off, and now we have a custom sensor Featherwing ready for the Hue controller project. And we'll go have a look at that in a few minutes. Bye-bye. Okay, so let's put together the Hue control node. Here I have a triple Feather Proto board, I guess it's called. I've got a big battery on the back. This is a 2500 milliamp hour 3.7 volt LiPo. So let's put that in here. That's just rubber banded on to keep it in place. Okay. There we go. Let's put things together now. I have 4 different feathery things. First of all, there is Feather M0 Wi-Fi. And on top of that, I'm going to put the OLED Featherwing. Here I have a high precision real-time clock Featherwing, and the sensor Featherwing that we made, that I made. You can make one too. Now, let's hook up the battery. It'll hook up to Wi-Fi it'll get the daily sunrise sunset times, and then it'll hook up to the my Hue and start working. Where's the battery? There we go. Let's see it. Power up. And there it is. As you can see, time, date. It's detecting motion, so the red light, the NeoPixel's on. The light level is around a little over 400 as detected by the photocell. And it says it's dark out. It is currently a little past 10:30, so yes, indeed, it is dark out. And I should be awake because I think I set it to bedtime being like midnight or something. If we cover that, we'll see the light level drops greatly. All right, so that's working nicely. If I hold really still for a little while, it should see me not moving. Let's see how long that takes. The display will change to no motion and the NeoPixel should go dark. Let's change the timeout value on this. There we go. There. So that should time out a lot faster. I adjusted the... there we go. No motion, light went off. Now if I move, motion, light goes on. For some reason it didn't turn on the lights. Oh, no motion. Yeah, okay, let's see. There we go. Cool. So there it is. Yeah, and I set that timeout way lower, far lower than you would want. And that's one of the adjustments in the PIR. So, anyway, there it is.